The desert sun beat down mercilessly as Sarah Coleman stumbled through the scrubland, her worn boots leaving desperate tracks in the red earth. 3 days without food, 2 without water. The gold wedding band, her mother's last gift, pressed against her palm as she approached the trading post, her vision swimming with heat and hunger. Behind her, somewhere in the vastness of New Mexico territory, her father's men still searched. She'd rather die in this wilderness than become Matthew Crane's property, sold like livestock to settle her father's gambling debts. The trading post keeper barely glanced at the ring. "Gold's fine, but won't buy you safety from what's coming." He nodded toward the horizon, where dust clouds rose. "Apache raiders. Best get inside." Before you continue with Sarah's desperate journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. I'm curious, where are you listening from today? Sarah's heart hammered as she heard the thunder of hooves, but these weren't her father's men. Through the wavering heat, riders emerged, 6 Apache warriors. Their horses painted for war, bows and rifles gleaming. She'd heard the stories, the warnings. Yet as they surrounded the trading post, something in their disciplined formation spoke not of mindless violence, but of purpose. The leader dismounted with fluid grace, his long black hair braided with leather and turquoise, his scarred chest bare except for a breastplate of bone. His dark eyes swept past her dismissively, until they didn't. He paused, studying her torn dress, her bleeding feet, the desperate hunger in her face. "Water," she whispered in broken Spanish, the only alternative to English she knew. "Por favor." He spoke in English, his accent careful and precise. "You run from something, or someone." It wasn't a question. Sarah's throat closed. In the distance, she heard new riders, her father's men, calling her name like a possession being retrieved. The Apache leader's eyes hardened. He barked orders in his own language, and his warriors moved with military precision. Then he turned to Sarah, and she saw something unexpected in his face: understanding. "Don't fight, stranger," he said, his voice low and commanding. "We take you, safer than what follows." Sarah had no choice. She didn't fight as strong hands lifted her onto a horse, as the warriors formed a protective circle around her. She glimpsed her pursuers cresting the hill, saw their fury as the Apache riders scattered like smoke, each taking a different direction. She clung to the warrior behind her as they rode hard through arroyos and over mesas, the landscape blurring. When they finally stopped at a hidden canyon camp, as twilight painted the sky purple and gold, Sarah could barely stand. The leader caught her before she fell. "I am Neshoba," he said. "Wolf, you are safe here." The camp was nothing like the savage encampment she'd imagined from whispered stories. Women tended fires, children played, elders sat in quiet conversation. This was a family, a community, and they watched her with curiosity, but not hatred. An older woman brought her water in a clay vessel. Sarah drank gratefully, tasting minerals and life. Neshoba spoke to the woman in their language, his mother. Sarah realized from the gentle way he addressed her. "You will stay in my sister's wickiup tonight," Neshoba said. "Tomorrow, we talk about why white men hunt you like an animal." Sarah wanted to protest, to explain, but exhaustion crashed over her. Neshoba's sister, a young woman named Kiona, led her to a dome-shaped shelter covered in brush and hides. Inside was surprisingly comfortable. Woven mats, soft furs, the smell of sage and cedar. "Sleep," Kiona said in halting English, her smile kind. "Safe now." For the first time in weeks, Sarah believed it. She woke to voices arguing, Neshoba's deep rumble, and another man's sharp objections. Sarah emerged from the wickiup to find the camp in tension. A warrior gestured angrily toward her, his words rapid and harsh. "Kuruk says you bring danger," Nashoba translated, his face impassive. "Says white woman means soldiers come." "I don't want to bring trouble to your people," Sarah said quickly. "I can leave. You can barely walk." Nashoba's observation was matter-of-fact. "And you have nowhere to go." He spoke again in Apache, his tone brooking no argument. Kuruk spat in the dust but fell silent. Over the following days, an uneasy rhythm developed. Sarah helped the women with tasks, grinding corn, preparing hides, gathering wood. Her hands, soft from a life of enforced idleness as a banker's daughter, blistered and bled. She didn't complain. These people had saved her life when they could have easily left her to die. Neshoba watched her often. She felt his gaze as she worked, as she struggled to learn Apache words from Kiona, as she sat by the fire at night, trying not to think about her old life. He rarely spoke to her directly, maintaining a careful distance that somehow made her more aware of him, of the way he moved with lethal grace, of the respect his people showed him, of the intelligence in his eyes that defied every ignorant assumption she'd been raised with. One afternoon, he approached as she attempted to saddle a horse. "You do it wrong," he said simply. "Horse will throw you." Sarah's pride flared. "I've ridden since I was a child, on a fancy saddle, with servants." His eyes held no judgment, only observation. "This is different. I show you." His hands guided hers, adjusting the blanket, securing the girth with knots she'd never seen. His touch was impersonal, yet sent warmth through her skin. This close, she could see the scars on his arms, his chest, stories written in healed wounds. "How did you learn English so well?" she asked. His jaw tightened. "Mission school, before I understood what they wanted to take from us." He stepped back. "Now you try alone." The horse didn't throw her. Sarah felt a small surge of triumph as she rode around the camp, Neshoba watching with what might have been approval. That night, as the camp slept, Sarah heard movement outside the wickiup. She emerged to find Neshoba standing watch, his rifle cradled loosely in his arms, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the firelight. "You don't sleep?" she asked softly. "Someone must watch." He glanced at her. "You should rest." "I can't." Sarah wrapped her shawl tighter against the desert cold. "Every time I close my eyes, I see my father's face, Matthew Crane's hands reaching for me." Neshoba was silent for a long moment. Then, "Sit, I will tell you a story." She settled near the fire, and he spoke of his people's history, of freedom and loss, of fighting to protect what they loved, of the impossible choice between survival and surrender. His voice was low, hypnotic, painting pictures of a world she'd never imagined. "You understand running," Sarah whispered. "Being hunted." "Yes." His eyes met hers across the flames. "I also understand fighting back." "I don't know how. I was raised to be ornamental, obedient." "You are here." Neshoba's intensity pinned her. "You chose your own path. That is the first fight." He paused. "Tomorrow, I teach you to shoot." "Why?" Sarah's throat tightened. "Why help me?" "Because you are not property," he said simply. "You are a person. This I understand. Those words cracked something inside her. Sarah looked away, blinking back tears she'd held for too long. The next morning, Neshoba led her beyond the camp to a ravine where the sound of gunfire wouldn't carry far. He handed her his rifle, showing her how to hold it, how to breathe, how to see the target not as something separate, but as an extension of her intention. "Gentle," he murmured, standing behind her, his hands guiding her shoulders into position. "Like you hold something precious. Then, when ready, strike." The rifle's kick surprised her, and the shot went wild. Neshoba caught her before she stumbled. "Again," he said. They practiced until the sun climbed high, until her shoulder ached and her ears rang. But the last shot hit the mark, a dead cottonwood branch 50 yards away. Sarah lowered the rifle, breathless, exhilarated. "I did it. You did." Something warm flickered in Neshoba's eyes. "You learn fast, stranger. My name is Sarah," she said. "Sarah Coleman. Sarah." He tested the name, made it sound like music. "I am Neshoba, wolf of the mountain Chiricahua." "I know," she met his gaze. "Thank you for everything." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither dared name. Then Kurik's shout shattered it. Riders approaching, a white flag raised. Neshoba's expression hardened to stone. "Stay behind me." They returned to camp to find 3 men on horseback, a marshal and 2 deputies, their badges glinting. The marshal's weathered face held weary authority. "We're looking for a woman," he called out. "Sarah Coleman. Her father says she was taken by Apache raiders." "I wasn't taken," Sarah said, stepping forward before Neshoba could stop her. "I came willingly. They saved my life." The marshal's eyebrows rose. "Your father's filing kidnapping charges, Miss Coleman. Says you're not in your right mind." "My father sold me to Matthew Crane to settle his debts." Sarah's voice shook but held. "I ran. If that's madness, then yes, I'm insane." The marshal shifted in his saddle, clearly uncomfortable. "Miss, your father's a respected banker." "My father's a drunk and a coward." The words burst from her, years of silence breaking. "And Matthew Crane beats his horses. I won't let him beat me." Strong words. The marshal studied her, then Neshoba, who stood with lethal stillness beside her. "These Apache treating you well?" "Better than my own blood ever did." The marshal sighed. "I can't force you, Miss Coleman. You're of age. But your father's got resources. He'll make trouble. Then he makes trouble." Sarah lifted her chin. "I'm not going back." After the lawmen left, Neshoba turned to her, something fierce and proud in his expression. "You chose your path again." "I did." Sarah felt the weight of it, the freedom and terror combined. "What happens now?" "Now," Neshoba said quietly, "you truly learn to survive, because they will come back, and next time it will not be lawmen." He was right. 3 days later, Kiona burst into camp at dawn, her horse lathered with sweat. "Riders," she gasped. "Many, with guns, coming from the south." Neshoba moved instantly, barking orders. Women and children scattered to hiding places, prepared for exactly this. Caves in the canyon walls, brush-covered shelters. Warriors gathered weapons, their faces grim. "Sarah," Neshoba gripped her shoulders. "You go with the women, into the high caves." "No," the words surprised them both. "I can shoot. You taught me. I won't hide while others fight for me." "You are not a warrior." "Neither was I a runaway or a survivor, but I'm becoming one." Sarah held his gaze. "Please let me stand with you." Something shifted in his expression. respect, maybe even admiration. Stay beside me. Do exactly as I say. The attackers came as the sun cleared the canyon rim. 12 riders led by Matthew Crane himself, his handsome face twisted with rage. Beside him rode Sarah's father, looking small and old. They stopped beyond rifle range, and Crane's voice echoed off the rocks. "Sarah, you've had your tantrum. Time to come home." "This is my home now," she shouted back, surprised by her own conviction. Crane's laugh was ugly. "With savages? I'll burn this camp to ash and drag you out by your hair." Neshoba's hand tightened on his rifle, but his voice remained controlled. "Leave now. We do not want bloodshed." "You don't want," Crane spat. "You're sitting on my land, savage. I've got legal claim to this canyon." "Papers mean nothing here," Neshoba said coldly. "This is Apache land. Always has been." "Not anymore." Crane raised his hand, and his men raised their rifles. The first shot cracked the morning air. Sarah didn't think. She raised her rifle and fired back, her bullet striking the rock face near Crane's horse. The animal reared, and chaos erupted. The Apache warriors had the advantage of position and knowledge of the terrain. They moved like shadows, using the canyon walls and boulders for cover, their arrows and bullets finding marks while Crane's men fired wildly. But Crane's group had more ammunition, more desperation. Sarah fired again and again, her shoulder bruising from the recoil, her heart hammering. Beside her, Neshoba moved with deadly efficiency, each shot precise and purposeful. She saw Kuruk take a bullet to the leg, saw an elder warrior fall. Then Crane broke from cover, charging directly toward their position on horseback, a madman's fury in his eyes. Neshoba stepped forward, but Sarah was faster. She raised her rifle, sighted carefully as he'd taught her, and fired. The bullet caught Crane in the shoulder, spinning him from the saddle. He hit the ground hard, and his men, seeing their leader fall, broke and scattered, dragging Crane with them. Sarah's father rode away without looking back. In the ringing silence that followed, Sarah lowered her smoking rifle with shaking hands. She'd shot a man. Almost killed him. Neshoba touched her arm gently. "Breathe, Sarah. You protected yourself. Protected us." "I almost," her voice broke. "But you didn't." He turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "You showed mercy even in battle. That takes greater strength than killing." Around them, the camp emerged from hiding. Warriors tended wounded. Women checked children. The cost of Sarah's freedom lay written in blood on the canyon floor. 2 Apache wounded, 1 dead, because of her. "This is my fault," she whispered. "No," Neshoba's voice was fierce. "This is the fault of men who see people as possessions. You did not bring this. They did." But Sarah couldn't shake the guilt. That night, as the camp mourned their fallen warrior, she sat apart, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Kiona brought her food she couldn't eat. Neshoba's mother offered her water she couldn't drink. It was Neshoba who finally sat beside her, his presence solid and warm in the cold night. "Shantae died with honor," he said quietly, "fighting to protect his home, his people. He would not blame you." "How can you know?" "Because I know my people." Neshoba was silent a moment. "We have always fought for what we love. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but we do not blame those we protect for needing protection." Sarah turned to him, seeing the weight he carried. Leader, warrior, protector. "How you bear it, all this responsibility." "I don't. Not alone." His eyes met hers. "That is why we are a people, not just persons." "I've never had that," Sarah said softly. "Never belonged anywhere, to anyone." Neshoba's hand covered hers, warm and rough and real. You belong here, with us, if you choose it. The touch sent electricity through her, awareness sharp and sudden. Neshoba, don't fight, stranger, he murmured, echoing the words he'd spoken when they first met. But now, they meant something different. Don't fight what's between us. I don't know what this is, she whispered. Neither do I. His thumb traced circles on her wrist, over her racing pulse. But I know I see you, Sarah. Not a possession, not a burden. A woman worth saving, worth knowing. Her breath caught. Your people wouldn't accept it. A white woman. Some would, some wouldn't. Neshoba's jaw tightened. But I am Chief's son. I choose my own path, as you have chosen yours. Sarah wanted to lean into him, to close the distance between them, but fear held her back. I bring danger to you, to everyone. You bring light. His hand cupped her face, gentle despite his warrior's calluses. You bring courage. You bring yourself. That is enough. When he kissed her, it was soft and careful, asking rather than taking. Sarah melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, the taste of him like coming home to a place she'd never been. When they parted, both were breathing hard. Sarah, her name on his lips was a prayer. Stay with me, not as a refugee, as my woman, my equal. Yes, she breathed, the word easier than any she'd spoken before. Yes. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Sarah's life. Neshoba courted her in the Apache way, bringing her fresh meat from his hunts, teaching her their language and customs, sitting with her under the stars as they talked about everything and nothing. The camp gradually accepted her, seeing how she worked alongside them, how she respected their ways, while sharing her own knowledge. Kiona became her sister in truth, teaching her to weave baskets and tan hides. Neshoba's mother showed her which plants to gather for medicine, for food, for ceremony. Even Karuk grudgingly acknowledged her skill with a rifle. But the outside world wouldn't let them be. Word came through traders that Matthew Crane was calling in favors, gathering men, planning revenge. The army was asking questions about hostile Apache harboring a white woman. Pressure was building. One night, Neshoba held a council with his warriors and elders. Sarah sat beside him, trying to follow the rapid Apache debate. Finally, Neshoba spoke in English so she would understand. We have 3 paths, he said. Fight, run, or negotiate. We always fight, Karuk said. And we always lose ground, Neshoba countered. I will not lead my people to destruction for pride. What do you propose? Asked an elder. Neshoba looked at Sarah, his expression unreadable. I marry Sarah in both Apache and white man's ceremony. Make it legal in their eyes. Then she is my wife, not a runaway, and I am not a kidnapper, but a husband. Sarah's heart hammered. This wasn't how she'd imagined a proposal, as a strategic move in a conflict. Yet as she looked at Neshoba, she saw the truth beneath his practical words. He was choosing her, publicly, irrevocably. Yes, she said, I'll marry you. The Apache ceremony happened at dawn 3 days later. Sarah wore a dress of soft deerskin that Kiona and the other women had made, decorated with beads and quills in patterns that told stories. Neshoba wore his finest, a shirt of white elk hide, his hair braided with eagle feathers earned in battle. They stood before the sacred fire as Neshoba's mother, who was also the camp's medicine woman, spoke blessings in Apache. Neshoba translated quietly, his voice rough with emotion. 2 paths become one. 2 hearts beat as one drum. May the spirits guide your steps together. They shared honey from a clay bowl, symbolizing the sweetness they would bring to each other's lives. They exchanged gifts. Nashoba gave her a knife with a bone handle carved with wolves. Sarah gave him a woven band she'd made with hands that had finally learned useful work. When Nashoba kissed her, the camp erupted in celebration. Whoops and songs, drums beginning to beat. Sarah laughed against his lips, tasting joy and future and belonging. "My wife," Nashoba murmured, "my husband." The words felt right, like a key turning in a lock. But they still needed the white man's ceremony to make it legal. A week later, they rode to Santa Fe with an escort of warriors. Nashoba would not risk Sarah's safety. The town was hostile, people staring at the Apache with fear and hatred. But Nashoba moved through it with his head high, his hand never leaving his rifle. The justice of the peace was an old man who'd seen too much to be shocked by anything. He married them in his dusty office, the ceremony brief and official. When he pronounced them man and wife, Nashoba produced papers he'd had drawn up, marriage certificate, property deed to a stretch of land outside town that bordered Apache territory, a legal declaration of his citizenship through treaty rights. "You've thought of everything," Sarah said as they left the building. "I protect what is mine." Nashoba's eyes were fierce. "And you are mine now, in both our laws." That protection was tested immediately. Matthew Crane stepped from an alley, his arm still in a sling from Sarah's bullet, his face purple with rage. "You think a piece of paper changes anything?" he snarled. "You're still the whore who ran off with a savage." Nashoba moved before Crane finished speaking, his fist connecting with Crane's jaw with a crack that echoed off the buildings. Crane went down hard, spitting blood. "Speak of my wife with respect," Nashoba said coldly. "Or don't speak at all." Crane scrambled backward, his good hand going for his gun. But Sarah was faster. She drew the pistol Nashoba had given her and aimed it steadily at Crane's chest. "Don't," she said simply. "I missed your heart once. I won't miss again." For a moment, the street was frozen. Sarah holding a gun on her former fiancé, Nashoba standing over him like an avenging spirit, the Apache warriors fanning out behind them. Then the sheriff arrived, drawn by the commotion. "What's happening here?" he demanded. "Mr. Crane was harassing my wife," Nashoba said, his English precise and formal. "I defended her honor." "Your wife?" The sheriff looked at Sarah, recognition dawning. "Miss Coleman?" "Mrs. Nashoba now." Sarah lowered her gun but didn't holster it. "Legally married as of an hour ago. And Mr. Crane was trespassing when he approached us with hostile intent." The sheriff's mouth twitched. Was that a suppressed smile? "That true, Crane?" Crane spat blood. "She's a lying—" "Careful," Nashoba said softly. "My patience has limits." The sheriff sighed. "Get out of here, Crane. And Coleman?" He looked at Sarah. "Your daddy's been making noise about bringing you home. Might want to set him straight." "I will," Sarah said firmly. Her father's bank was 3 streets over. Sarah walked in with her head high, Nashoba beside her, ignoring the gasps and whispers. Her father looked up from his desk, his face going gray. "Sarah, thank God, I've been so worried." "No, you haven't." Sarah's voice was steady. "You've been worried about your reputation, your debt, but not about me." "That's not true. I'm married now, to Nashoba. It's legal and binding." She placed the marriage certificate on his desk. "I'm not your problem anymore, and I'm not your asset." Her father's face crumpled. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I was desperate. Crane said he'd forgive the debt if you married him, and I thought, you thought you could sell me like property." Sarah leaned forward. "But I'm not property. I'm a person, and I choose my own life now." "With a savage?" Her father's voice rose. "Sarah, think about what you're doing." "I am." She straightened. "I'm thinking clearly for the first time in my life. Goodbye, father." As they left the bank, Sarah felt lighter than air. Neshoba took her hand, squeezed it gently. "You are free now," he said. "Truly free." "We are free," she corrected. "Together." They returned to the canyon camp to continue their lives. The seasons turned. Summer's heat giving way to autumn's gold. Winter's cold to spring's renewal. Sarah learned the rhythms of Apache life, and the camp learned to value her contributions. She taught English to the children, shared her knowledge of reading and writing, bridged two worlds, and every night she fell asleep in Neshoba's arms, safe and chosen and home. But peace never lasted long in those times. Spring brought new tensions. The army pressuring the Apache to move to reservations, settlers pushing onto traditional hunting grounds, old conflicts erupting into new violence. Neshoba grew quieter, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. One evening, he didn't return from a hunting trip. As the sun set and the canyon filled with shadows, fear gripped Sarah's heart. She found Kiona preparing to ride out with a search party. "I'm coming," Sarah said. "Neshoba would say no," Kiona replied. "Neshoba isn't healed to tell me no." Sarah checked her rifle, her pistol, her knife. "Let's go." They followed Neshoba's trail into the mountains, where the pine trees grew thick and the air thinned. As darkness fell, they heard it, gunshots echoing off the rocks. Sarah kicked her horse faster, fear giving her reckless courage. They found Neshoba pinned down in a ravine, surrounded by 5 men, bounty hunters from their rough appearance. One of them lay dead, but Neshoba was wounded, blood staining his side, his ammunition clearly running low. "Don't fight, stranger," one of the bounty hunters called mockingly. "Just the Apache we want. Armies paying good money for hostiles." Sarah didn't think. She raised her rifle and fired, her bullet shattering the rock beside the speaker's head. "Leave him alone." The bounty hunters spun toward the new threat, and in that moment of distraction, Neshoba moved, wounded but deadly, taking down another man with his knife before diving for cover. The other warriors with Sarah opened fire, and suddenly the bounty hunters were the ones pinned down. They broke and ran, abandoning their dead. Sarah slid from her horse and scrambled down to where Neshoba leaned against a boulder, breathing hard, his hand pressed to his bleeding side. "You shouldn't be here," he gasped. "Where else would I be?" Sarah tore strips from her shirt, pressing them to his wound. "Go slow," she whispered. "It hurts, I know. I'll die before I hurt you," Neshoba managed, his lips curving despite the pain. "Don't you dare die at all." Sarah's hands trembled as she worked to stop the bleeding. "I just got you. I'm not letting you go." They got him back to camp, where Neshoba's mother worked her healing magic with herbs and prayers. Sarah stayed by his side through 3 fevered days and nights, sponging his brow, forcing water and broth between his lips, refusing to let him slip away. On the 4th morning, his eyes opened clear and focused. "Sarah, I'm here." She caught his hand, pressed it to her cheek. "Always here. You saved my life. You saved mine first." Sarah smiled through tears. "I was just returning the favor." Neshoba's recovery was slow, but it gave them time. Time to talk, to plan, to imagine a future. The pressure from the outside world was building, and they both knew the camp couldn't stay in the canyon forever. But neither would they surrender to forced reservation life. "There's land," Neshoba said one evening, his strength returning. "The property I bought in Santa Fe. It's good land, water, grass, protected. We could build there, a ranch, a home." "For both our peoples?" Sarah asked. "For whoever needs it." His eyes held dreams and determination. "A place where Apache can live free but safe, where we teach both ways, our traditions and the white man's tools. Where our children—" He stopped, color rising in his face. "Our children," Sarah repeated softly, placing his hand on her belly, where she'd suspected for a week now that new life was growing. "Would learn both their heritages, be strong in both worlds." Neshoba's eyes widened. "I think so, maybe 2 months." She smiled. "Surprise?" He pulled her into his arms, careful of his healing wound, and kissed her with all the love and hope and fierce protection she'd come to know as his essence. "Our child," he murmured against her hair. "Born into both worlds, making their own path, like we did," Sarah said. Together, the decision was made. The camp would gradually relocate to the new land, blending into the margins of white settlement while maintaining their identity and freedom. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever was. But they would face it together. 2 peoples becoming one community. 2 paths becoming one future. On a golden afternoon in early summer, Sarah stood on the porch of their new house, part Apache wickiup, part white settler's cabin, a structure that honored both traditions. Below, in the valley, Apache families and white neighbors who'd chosen to see people rather than stereotypes worked side by side, raising barns and planting crops. Neshoba came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his hands settling on her now obvious belly. "What are you thinking?" he murmured. "That I was so lost," Sarah said softly, "running from one prison toward nothing. And I found everything. We found each other." Neshoba turned her to face him, his eyes full of the love they'd fought for, earned, chosen every day. "You are not property. You are my partner, my equal, my heart." "All right. And you," Sarah said, touching his face, "this man who'd seen her when no one else had, are my freedom, my home, my love." As the sun set over their valley, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, they stood together. 2 survivors who'd become fighters, 2 fighters who'd become lovers, 2 lovers who'd become family. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but they'd walk it hand in hand, building something new from the pieces of 2 worlds. Together, the first winter on their new land tested everything Sarah and Neshoba had built. Snow buried the valley in white silence, and the cold bit deep into bones used to desert heat. Sarah's pregnancy advanced through the frozen months, her belly swelling as the world outside contracted. She stood at the window of their hybrid home, watching Neshoba and Karuk work to secure the livestock barn against another coming storm. He moved differently now, still strong, still graceful, but with the careful awareness of a man who'd nearly died. The scar on his side was a silver line she traced in the darkness of their bed, a reminder of how fragile their happiness was. "You worry too much," Kiona said, coming up beside her with warm tea. She'd chosen to stay close, building her own home just down the valley with a young warrior named Takota. He's stronger than you think. I know how strong he is. Sarah accepted the tea gratefully. That's what worries me. Strong men think they're invincible. Kiona laughed. And stubborn women think they can save everyone. The words hit home. Sarah had spent the last months trying to be everything to everyone. Mediator between Apache families and white neighbors. Teacher to children of both cultures. Healer when Neshoba's mother was overwhelmed. All while carrying a child and managing the ranch. That night, as they lay in bed with the wind howling outside, Neshoba's hands settled on her belly, feeling their child kick. "You do too much," he said quietly. Says the man who worked until dark repairing fences. "I am one person. You try to be 10. His thumb traced circles on her skin. "Sarah, you don't have to prove yourself anymore. Not to me. Not to anyone." "I'm not trying to prove," but she stopped. Because maybe she was. Proving she deserved this life, this love, this belonging. Old habits, she admitted. Then learn new ones. Neshoba pulled her closer, his warmth surrounding her. Learn to accept help. Learn to rest. Learn that your worth isn't in what you do, but who you are. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "When did you become so wise?" "I married a woman who challenges me to see clearly." He kissed her temple. "She teaches me every day." The baby came in early spring, during a thunderstorm that shook the valley with its fury. Neshoba's mother and Kiona attended the birth, along with a white midwife from town, Mrs. Henderson, who'd surprised everyone by accepting Sarah's invitation to help. Labor was long and brutal. Sarah gripped Neshoba's hand so hard she thought she might break his fingers, her screams mixing with thunder. But when the baby finally emerged, a boy with his father's dark eyes and his mother's determined chin, the storm broke and sunlight flooded the room. "Dakota," Neshoba whispered, holding his son with trembling hands. "It means friend to everyone." Sarah watched her husband cradle their child, this warrior who'd fought so many battles, now undone by 7 pounds of new life, and felt her heart might burst. "He's perfect," she breathed. "Like his mother." Neshoba carefully placed the baby in her arms, and little Dakota opened his eyes, dark and ancient and full of possibility. But perfection never lasted long in their world. 6 weeks after Dakota's birth, riders came. Not bounty hunters or soldiers, but a delegation from the Indian Affairs Bureau, accompanied by a cavalry escort. Sarah watched from the porch, holding her baby close as Neshoba went out to meet them. The lead official was a thin man with wire spectacles and the exhausted look of someone fighting a losing battle against bureaucracy. "Mr. Neshoba," he began formally, "I'm Agent Morrison. We need to discuss your situation." "My situation?" Neshoba's voice was dangerously quiet. "You're harboring Apache individuals who should be registered on the reservation at San Carlos. This is a violation of federal law." "These are my family," Neshoba said, "living on land I legally own, working as ranchers, not warriors. Where is the violation?" Morrison pulled out papers. "The Homestead Act requires applicants to be citizens. Your citizenship status is complicated. I have treaty papers, which the Bureau is currently reviewing." Morrison's tone suggested the review would take decades. "Until that's resolved, this settlement is considered illegal." Sarah stepped forward, Dakota in her arms. "My husband and I are married under territorial law. I'm a citizen. The land is in both our names. Are you suggesting my marriage is invalid? Morrison's face reddened. Mrs. Neshoba, that's not. Because if you are, I'll take this to every newspaper from here to Washington. Sarah's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I wonder how the story will read. Government invalidates legal marriage to steal land from wounded veteran and new mother. Veteran? Morrison blinked. Neshoba pulled open his shirt, showing the bullet scar. Fort Apache, 1878. I scouted for the army against hostile Chiricahua bands. Was promised land and citizenship for my service. Still waiting for both. The cavalry lieutenant accompanying Morrison shifted uncomfortably. I remember you, he said slowly. You saved our patrol from ambush at Eagle Canyon. Captain Hendricks, Neshoba acknowledged. You've been promoted. And you've been forgotten, apparently. Hendricks turned to Morrison. This man has papers from my former commander guaranteeing land rights. I saw them myself. Morrison looked trapped between bureaucracy and reality. Finally, he sighed. I'll need to see all documentation, but officially, I was never here. My report will state I found only a legal ranching operation run by American citizens. After they left, Sarah sagged against Neshoba, exhaustion and relief warring in her body. How long until they come back? Long enough. Neshoba held her and Dakota both. We buy time with every day we survive. Every person who sees us and understands. Every child like ours who proves both worlds can coexist. It shouldn't be this hard, Sarah whispered. No, but nothing worth having ever is. As Dakota grew from infant to toddler, the ranch became something unexpected, a refuge. Apache families who'd escaped reservation life found their way to the valley, along with white settlers fleeing failed claims and broken dreams. Chinese railroad workers who'd finished the transcontinental line and had nowhere to go. Even a family of freed slaves from Texas seeking land that wouldn't remind them of bondage. Sarah and Neshoba turned away no one who came honestly seeking help. Their hybrid community grew, bound not by blood or race, but by shared struggle and mutual respect. The children played together, learning multiple languages, trading customs, creating something entirely new. But growth brought new tensions. Some white ranchers in the area saw the settlement as a threat. Too many coloreds and Injuns, they muttered in town saloons. They pressured the territorial government, called for investigations, threatened violence. It came to a head one summer evening when Sarah was returning from town with supplies. Dakota, strapped to her back in an Apache cradleboard. 3 riders blocked the road. Local ranchers, drunk and mean-spirited. Well, well, the leader drawled. The squaw woman. How's life with the savages, Sarah Coleman? That's Mrs. Neshoba, Sarah said evenly, though her heart hammered. And you're blocking the road. This is white man's road. Maybe you forgot which side you're supposed to be on. Sarah's hand moved to the rifle strapped to her saddle. I'm on the side of going home to my family. Move, or what? You'll shoot us? The rancher laughed. You ain't got the... The bullet kicked up dust between his horse's feet. Sarah had drawn and fired in one smooth motion, Neshoba's training automatic in her muscles. The next one goes higher, she said calmly. Your choice. The ranchers moved, cursing, but their eyes promised retribution. Sarah rode hard for home, her son gurgling happily against her back, oblivious to the danger. Neshoba met her at the gate, knowing immediately something was wrong. After she told him, his face went hard as stone. They threaten my wife, my son. This cannot stand. What can we do? Sarah asked. They're connected, powerful. So are we. Neshoba's eyes gleamed with determination. We fight back, not with bullets, with truth, with witnesses. With the law they claim to uphold. He called a meeting of all the valley families that night. Apache warriors sat beside white farmers, Chinese laborers next to Mexican vaqueros. Sarah stood before them, holding Dakota, and spoke. "We're all refugees here," she said. "From poverty, persecution, violence, or injustice. We came seeking something better. Land to work, dignity to claim, freedom to build, and we found it together. But others want to take it from us," Neshoba continued. "They use fear and hatred as weapons, so we must use unity and law as our shield." They drafted a petition, signed by every adult in the valley, documenting the legal basis for their settlement, the contributions each family made, the peaceful coexistence they'd achieved. They sent copies to the territorial governor, the Indian Affairs Bureau, and most importantly, to newspapers in Santa Fe and Denver. The story caught fire. Eastern journalists, hungry for tales of the Wild West, descended on the valley. They interviewed Sarah, the banker's daughter who chose freedom over privilege. They talked to Neshoba, the Apache warrior who became a rancher. They photographed Chinese children playing with Apache and white youngsters, all speaking a pidgin mix of languages. "The future of the West," one headline proclaimed, "where color barriers dissolve in shared purpose." The publicity was both shield and target. Supporters sent letters of encouragement and donations. Detractors sent threats. The territorial government, caught between progressive ideals and racial prejudice, dithered. Then came the fire. Sarah woke to Dakota crying, and the smell of smoke. She snatched up her son and ran outside to see flames consuming the barn, their largest building, where winter feed was stored. Neshoba was already organizing men with buckets, but the fire was too fierce, fed by dry hay. They saved the animals, but lost the building. And in the ashes they found evidence: kerosene cans, a torch, footprints leading away. Arson. "This is my fault," Sarah said, staring at the destruction. "If I hadn't shot near them." "If you hadn't, they would have hurt you." Neshoba's voice was raw with smoke and fury. "This is not your fault. This is theirs." But the attack unified the valley like nothing else could. Families who'd kept to themselves joined the common defense. The Chinese laborers, skilled with explosives from railroad work, rigged alarm systems. Apache warriors taught tracking and surveillance. Even the children helped, watching the roads for strangers. Captain Hendricks, hearing of the arson, came personally with a cavalry squad. "This is a federal crime," he announced. "Burning civilian property on land with government ties. I'm investigating." His investigation was thorough and public. He questioned everyone in the valley, documented the evidence, interviewed townspeople. And when 3 of the local ranchers suddenly decided to take extended trips to California, he tracked them down and brought them back in chains. The trial became a spectacle. Sarah testified about the confrontation on the road. Townspeople admitted hearing the ranchers make threats. Physical evidence linked them to the arson. The territorial judge, aware of national attention, had no choice but to convict. "Attempted murder, arson, and conspiracy," he pronounced. 5 years, hard labor. As the guilty men were led away, one turned to Sarah with hatred burning in his eyes. "You'll pay for this, breed lover. Your mongrel son, too." Neshoba moved like lightning, his hand closing on the man's throat. Threaten my family again, he said softly, and prison will be the safest place for you. The bailiff pulled them apart, but the message was clear. The valley had teeth. It would defend itself. That winter was harsh, but hopeful. They rebuilt the barn, bigger and better, with stone foundations. More families arrived, drawn by stories of the settlement. Sarah started a school, teaching reading and writing to children of all backgrounds. Nashoba worked with sympathetic officials to formalize land claims and secure legal protections. And through it all, Dakota grew, running through the valley on sturdy legs, learning words in 5 languages, beloved by everyone. He was the future they were building, proof that bridges could be stronger than walls. One evening in early spring, as Sarah and Nashoba watched their son play with other children, a miniature United Nations of the frontier, she leaned against her husband's shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up the old ways? The freedom of the mountains?" Nashoba was quiet for a long moment, his arm around her waist. "I grieve what was lost, the land we cannot roam, the traditions that die with each elder, the pride of living by our own laws." "But," Sarah prompted, "but I look at our son. I see him learn both our languages, both our strengths. I see children of different peoples playing together, learning that skin color matters less than character." He turned to her, his eyes serious. "The old ways were dying, Sarah. We could die with them, or we could plant seeds of something new. I choose to plant." Sarah kissed him, tasting hope and sorrow mixed. "So do I." As the sun set over their valley, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, the community gathered for an evening meal, as had become their custom. Voices rose in song, Apache chants blending with Irish ballads, Chinese folk songs harmonizing with Mexican corridos. Around the fire, barriers dissolved in shared food, shared stories, shared dreams. This was their answer to hatred, not violence, but life. Not separation, but integration. Not purity, but strength through diversity. And in the middle of it all, Sarah held her husband's hand and knew that every battle they'd fought, both of them, separately and together, had been worth it for this moment, for this community, for this future. "Together," Nashoba murmured, echoing the word that had become their promise, their prayer, their purpose. "Together," Sarah agreed. Whatever came next, and they both knew challenges would never end, they would face it the only way that mattered, not as white or Apache. Not as man or woman, not as individuals standing alone, but as family, as community, as proof that different worlds could not just coexist, but create something better than either alone. Their valley stood as testament to a truth the wider world was only beginning to learn, that strength comes not from sameness, but from unity in diversity. That the future belongs not to those who fight to preserve the past, but to those brave enough to build something new. And as the stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had guided Sarah when she fled, that had watched over Nashoba's people for generations, they shone down on a place where 2 paths had truly become one, where 2 lost souls had found each other, and in finding each other, had found home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Sarah and Nashoba's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.